The job posting felt like a lifeline. I'd been unemployed for 6 months after a series of layoffs hit my industry, and my savings were down to ramen noodle levels. So when Midline Solutions reached out about a job as a corporate data analyst, I jumped at the chance. The office was downtown, housed in one of those mirrored skyscrapers that reflected the clouds so perfectly it seemed to vanish against the sky. The hiring manager called me back the day after my interview. I didn't even negotiate, I just said yes. The strangeness started on my first day. I arrived 15 minutes early, wanting to make a good impression. The lobby was quiet, too quiet for a building this size. The air smelled faintly metallic, like old pennies. A receptionist behind a glossy black desk looked up at me with glassy eyes and a too-wide smile. "Welcome to Midline Solutions," she said, voice syrupy and slow, like it was rehearsed. "You'll be working on floor 14. Please take elevator 3. I nodded and thanked her, though her demeanor left me unsettled. There were 4 elevators in the lobby, but I noticed elevator 3 looked off. Its brushed steel doors were marred with smudges, and the digital panel above it flickered faintly, struggling to hold the number display steady. I pressed the button, and the doors opened immediately, revealing an empty car. As I stepped inside, I caught the faintest whiff of something unpleasant, stale and sour, like wet carpet left to mildew. Before I could step back out, the doors shut with a metallic clang, sealing me in. The ride up was oddly long. The glowing numbers above the door crawled upward. 2, 3. For each one accompanied by a hollow ding that seemed to echo inside the elevator shaft. When I reached floor 14, the elevator let out a particularly sharp ding and shuddered to a stop. The doors slid open to reveal a dimly lit corridor. I stepped out and was greeted by silence. The office itself was sleek, all glass and steel with rows of identical cubicles. My new co-workers offered polite but muted greetings, their smiles fleeting and their eyes a bit too hollow. I noticed something odd. Everyone kept glancing at the far end of the room, toward a frosted glass door labeled Room 7. The door was locked, and no one ever seemed to go in or out. By lunchtime, I'd already noticed a few other odd quirks about the office. The fluorescent lights flickered sporadically, casting strange shadows that seemed to linger just a second too long. The air vents hummed, but the sound wasn't steady. It almost sounded like whispering. Once, when I leaned down to pick up a dropped pen, I swear I heard my name whispered faintly, just above the hum. I made it a point to ask Olivia, the coworker seated in the next cubicle over, about Room 7. She stiffened immediately, her fingers hovering mid-typing. "Don't worry about it," she said, not meeting my eyes. Her response only made me more curious. Later that afternoon, I was inputting data into a spreadsheet when the power suddenly went out. Everything shut down, the computers, the lights, even the hum of the air vents. For a moment, the office was submerged in complete darkness. Then, in the silence, I heard footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, and impossibly loud against the carpeted floor. The sound came from the direction of Room 7, moving closer and closer. "Hello," I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. The footsteps stopped. I held my breath, waiting. The darkness seemed to press against me, heavy and suffocating. Then, just as abruptly as it had gone out, the power returned. The fluorescent lights buzzed back to life, revealing an empty office, except a not quite empty. The door to Room 7 was ajar, but just barely. A sliver of shadow cut into the sterile light of the office. My heart pounded in my chest, a dull, thudding rhythm that drowned out the faint hum of the air vents. Did someone go in there? I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. I glanced around, but none of my co-workers seemed to notice. They were all glued to their monitors, heads bent low, typing furiously. No one reacted to the power outage, the sound of footsteps, or the now slightly open door. "Hey, Olivia," I whispered to the woman in the cubicle next to mine. She didn't respond. Her fingers clattered against the keyboard like a machine, typing lines of data into a spreadsheet. "Olivia," I tried again, louder this time. She froze, her hands hovering above the keys. Slowly, almost mechanically, she turned to look at me. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a tight line. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't look inside." Before I could ask her what she meant, she turned back to her monitor and resumed typing as if nothing had happened. Curiosity has always been my Achilles heel. I knew I should have let it go. I knew I should have just gone back to work like everyone else. But the door was calling to me. Not literally, it didn't whisper or hum like the air vents, but it felt alive somehow, like it was waiting for me to notice it. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor, and began walking toward room 7. The closer I got, the colder the air became. By the time I reached the door, I could see my breath puffing out in small, frosty clouds. My fingers trembled as I reached for the handle. The door creaked open an inch further, as if inviting me inside. The room beyond was pitch black, an inky void that seemed to swallow the light from the office behind me. I hesitated, glancing over my shoulder to see if anyone was watching. But my coworkers were still hunched over their desks, oblivious. I leaned forward, peering into the darkness. At first, I thought the room was empty. But then my eyes adjusted, and I saw something. In the center of the room stood a desk, an old wooden monstrosity that didn't match the sleek, modern aesthetic of the office. Papers were strewn across its surface, yellowed with age and curling at the edges. A single lamp sat on the desk, its bulb dim and flickering, casting weak light onto a small black notebook. I took a step inside. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the air changed. The metallic smell from the lobby returned, stronger now, almost choking. The door slammed shut behind me, plunging the room into darkness. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking. No response. I fumbled for my phone, using the flashlight to illuminate the space. The beam of light swept across the desk, the notebook, and the walls. I froze when I saw the walls. They were covered in writing. Words, scrawled in frantic, looping handwriting, covered every inch of the walls, ceiling, and floor. Some were written in ink, others in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. I stepped closer, angling my flashlight to read the words. "Don't look. IT sees you. Get out while you can." The phrases repeated over and over, overlapping and tangling like a spiderweb of warnings. I turned my attention to the desk, drawn to the black notebook. Its cover was cracked leather, its edges worn and frayed. Against my better judgment, I reached out and opened it. The pages were filled with the same frantic handwriting as the walls. The first entry was dated 5 years ago. I don't know how long I've been here. The days blur together. The office won't let me leave. It feeds on us, on our fear, our stress. I can feel it watching me through the walls. Room 7 is the heart of it. If you're reading this, get out now. I flipped to another page, my hands trembling. I saw it today. The entity. It doesn't have a face, just a shifting void where its features should be. It whispered my name. It knows me. It knows all of us. It's in our heads, feeding on our thoughts. I think I'm becoming part of it. The final entry was scrawled so violently the pen had torn through the paper in places. It's too late for me, but maybe not for you. Destroy this room. Destroy the notebook. Don't let it win. As I finished reading, the air grew colder. The lamp on the desk flickered and went out, plunging the room into total darkness. And then I heard it. A voice, low and guttural, whispered my name. "Daniel." The voice sent ice down my spine. It wasn't just the sound of my name. It was the way it stretched, like fingers running over my thoughts. I dropped the notebook and spun around, but the room was pitch black. My phone's flashlight flickered and then died, leaving me in a suffocating void. "Daniel," the voice whispered again, closer this time. I stumbled backward, my shoulder colliding with the desk. My hands scrabbled against the wood, searching for anything at all to defend myself. The air around me felt alive, charged with something malevolent. And then I saw it. A shape emerged from the darkness, tall and angular. Its body seemed to shift and ripple, as though it was made of shadows stitched together. Where its face should have been was nothing, a void so deep it hurt to look at. My knees buckled, and I fell to the floor. "Why are you here?" it hissed. The words didn't come from its featureless head, but from the walls themselves, the sound reverberating like a chorus of whispers. "I didn't mean to," I stammered, my voice breaking. It tilted its head, as if considering me. "You open the door. You let me see you." Suddenly, the room felt smaller, the walls closing in. The writing on them glowed faintly now, pulsing like a heartbeat. What do you want?" I choked out. The thing crouched, bringing its void where its face should have been level with mine. "Stay," it said. "You'll stay." Like the others. The others. The word jolted me. My coworkers, they've been acting strangely all day. Their movements mechanical, their eyes dull. I thought back to the receptionist in the lobby, her too-wide smile, her glassy gaze. Were they all trapped? No, I whispered, shaking my head. I'm not staying. The thing let out a sound that might have been laughter, low guttural rumble that made my skin crawl. You already belong to me, it said. The walls shimmered, and suddenly, I wasn't alone in the room. Figures began to emerge from the darkness, their outlines faint but unmistakable. They were people, dozens of them, maybe more. Their faces were pale and empty, their eyes black pits. They moved slowly, shuffling toward me, their mouths opening and closing as if trying to speak. I recognized Olivia among them. Help us, she mouthed, her voice a barely audible whisper beneath the growing hum in the room. I scrambled to my feet, panic surging through me. The desk, the notebook. The last entry, it said to destroy it. If this room was the heart of the entity, maybe it was the key to ending it. I lunged for the notebook, snatching it off the desk. The figures froze, their heads snapping toward me in unison. The entity let out a guttural roar, its shadowy form swelling and distorting. You will not, it bellowed, the walls trembling with the force of its voice. I ignored the fear clawing at my chest and tore the notebook in half. The pages ripped easily, disintegrating into ash in my hands. The entity screamed, a sound so loud and piercing I thought my eardrums would burst. The glowing words on the walls began to fade, the figures dissolving into wisps of shadow. No, it roared. You cannot. The entity lunged at me, its arms stretching into jagged, claw-like tendrils. But as it reached me, its form began to break apart, shattering into shards of darkness that vanished into the air. The room began to collapse around me. The walls crumbled, revealing nothing but a swirling void beyond. I felt myself being pulled toward it, the force dragging me off my feet. No, no, no. I screamed, clawing at the desk to hold on. The pull was too strong, and I felt myself slipping into the void. And then I was back. The light of the office blinded me, the hum of the air vents steady and comforting. I was lying on the floor just outside room 7. The door was shut, and the writing on the walls was gone. Daniel. I looked up to see Olivia standing over me, her face no longer pale and hollow. She looked normal. Alive. Around us, the office buzzed with life, employees chatting, phones ringing, keyboards clacking. Are you okay? Olivia asked, helping me to my feet. I think so, I said, my voice shaky. I glanced toward room 7. The door was no longer frosted glass, but solid wood, unmarked and unremarkable. It's over, Olivia said, following my gaze. Whatever you did, it's gone now. I quit that job the next day. Midline Solutions dissolved a week later, the company inexplicably filing for bankruptcy. I didn't care to look into the details. Sometimes, though, I still dream about the office. I see the entity, its shifting void of a face, and hear the whispers calling my name. And sometimes, just before I wake, I hear the hum of the air vents. And I wonder if it's really gone.